Today, we're tackling depression, but looking at it through two really different lenses.
Yeah, two fascinating perspectives. We've got Osho's sort of introspective take and the neuroscience from Superbrain, that book by Dr. Chopra and Dr. Tanzi.
Exactly. And it's that contrast, the inner emotional focus versus the brain science that makes this really interesting, I think.
Absolutely. How do these two worlds connect or maybe diverge when talking about something like depression?
That's what we're diving into. Our mission here is to, well, dig a bit deeper than the surface and pull out some key insights. We're using notes from a script on Osho and, of course, the Superbrain book itself.
Okay, sounds good. Where should we start? Osho.
Yeah, let's start there. Osho's perspective. It's definitely not just about feeling down, is it?
No, not at all. He sees it as something much, much deeper. Rooted, really.
Right. His whole argument, basically, is that it often comes from suppressing emotions. The stuff society tells us is bad anger, sadness, fear.
Mm-hmm. Things we're kind of taught to push down or hide.
And Osho's point is, well, those feelings don't just evaporate when you ignore them.
They get buried, right. And he suggests they actually transform deep down into what we experience as depression. It's like this internal pressure cooker.
That's a good way to put it. And then he connects that suppression to losing touch with, with ourselves.
Yeah, like if you're constantly editing your feelings based on what others think, you kind of lose sight of who you actually are deep down.
And that's where the feeling of meaninglessness can creep in, he suggests. Even if, life looks okay on the outside.
That feeling of emptiness, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a huge part of depression for many people.
Yeah.
So if that's the problem, what's Osho's solution?
Well, it's not about chasing happiness or fixing things quickly. It's more about turning inward, observing your own mind.
Okay.
But, and this is the crucial part, doing it without judgment.
Ah, the non-judgmental observation.
Yeah.
That's key, isn't it? Just watching thoughts and feelings come and go without slapping labels on them.
Exactly. It creates space rather than resistance. And meditation, for Osho, it's not about escaping the pain.
It's about facing it.
Directly engaging with it, yeah. He has this quote, something like, "Be sad, but with awareness. When you are consciously sad, sorrow becomes a transformative experience."
That really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Not trying to not feel sad, but being fully present with the sadness.
Yeah.
Consciously.
Right. Bringing awareness changes the quality of the experience. It stops being just this overwhelming thing.
And becomes something you can process, maybe learn from.
Perhaps. He also talks about releasing trapped energy actively.
How so?
Through things like, dance, laughter, crying, even deep breathing, or these active meditation techniques he developed, ways to get the energy moving.
Interesting. So it's not just passive observation. There's an active release component, too.
Yeah. His core idea seems to be that passivity, just getting stuck, feeds depression, whereas movement, awareness, acceptance, they weaken its grip.
It makes sense. Less stagnation, more flow, maybe.
Kind of, yeah. Okay, so that gives us a good feel for Osho's angle. Now let's switch over to Superbrain. How does the science perspective tackle this?
Well, a fundamental starting point for them is brain plasticity. This idea that our brains aren't fixed.
Right, the ability to change, to rewire.
Exactly. It's huge. Your brain can literally change its structure, its function throughout your life. It can rebuild, reprogram. It's not static.
Which is, incredibly hopeful when you're talking about something like depression.
Definitely. Because Superbrain argues depression isn't just chemicals or genes, though they can play a part. They see it more as a disorder in brain function and how the brain and mind interact.
Okay, so function, meaning how different parts are working or not working.
Pretty much. They talk about reduced activity in certain brain areas in people with depression. Areas linked to, pleasure, motivation, energy. The things that often feel diminished.
And they can actually see this with brain scans, like fMRI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Things like fMRI or PT scans can show, for instance, less blood flow or lower metabolic activity for key regions.
Which regions are we talking about?
Often areas like the prefrontal cortex that's vital for, like, decision-making, planning, emotional control, and the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory and learning, and seems sensitive to stress.
Wow. So you can literally see a difference in brain activity.
You can, but, and this is this really empowering bit from Superbrain, it's not necessarily permanent.
Back to plasticity.
Exactly. They argue that through conscious choices, healthy habits, focusing your mind, you can actually change your brain for the better. You can influence that activity.
Okay, so what are those choices? What do they recommend?
They get quite practical. First, a healthy diet, specifically anti-inflammatory. Think whole foods, less processed stuff. Inflammation isn't just bad for the body, it impacts the brain too.
Makes sense. What else?
Regular exercise, you mentioned walking, yoga, things known to boost mood and brain health.
Okay.
And daily meditation, that comes up again. Here, the focus is on reducing stress, building resilience, maybe even helping rebuild some neural connections.
It's fascinating how meditation pops up in both views, even if the explanation is different, one mystical, one neurological.
It really is. They also emphasize actively working on your thoughts, noticing negative patterns and consciously shifting towards more positive ones.
Right, cognitive reframing, essentially.
Sort of, yeah. And crucially, healthy relationships. Social connection is incredibly important for brain health and well-being. Don't underestimate that.
That's a big one. So diet, exercise, meditation, thought patterns, relationships, quite a toolkit.
Definitely. And they frame it around this idea of the mind being the architect of the brain.
What do they mean by architect?
That our mental activity, what we pay attention to, how we think, our awareness actually shapes the physical brain over time. By training your mind, to be more aware, present, flexible, you encourage the brain itself to heal and adapt positively.
Okay, so we've got Osho's deep dive into suppressed emotions and the self, and Superbrain's focus on brain function and plasticity. They come from such different places.
Worlds apart, really. Eastern mysticism versus Western neuroscience.
But what's really striking, as we've talked, is how much overlap there seems to be underneath it all.
I agree. It's compelling, isn't it? Both, in their own language, seem to suggest that depression isn't some kind of endpoint.
Right. Not a life sentence.
No. Osho sees it as maybe an opportunity for self-discovery. Superbrain frames it as a state where the brain can be changed, leading back to a sense of meaning. There's potential there.
And the paths to healing, they echo each other too. Osho's return to the self involves meditation and mindfulness.
And Superbrain specifically recommends daily meditation for stress reduction and neural rebuilding. It's right there.
And Osho talks about moving energy, being active.
While Superbrain highlights exercise and even diet, things that involve actively caring for the physical body, which houses the brain, of course.
Yeah, the connections are definitely there when you look closely.
So pulling it all together, maybe we can see depression as, well, potentially both things at once. A kind of deep emotional disconnection, like Osho describes.
And also a state where the brain isn't functioning optimally, as Superbrain details.
Exactly. And the really hopeful takeaway, I think, is that both viewpoints offer clear paths forward, ways to heal.
Yes, absolutely. Healing, finding meaning again. It seems possible, whichever lens you look through, whether it's that deep introspective work or making those conscious, science-backed lifestyle changes.
Or maybe a bit of both.
Well, that leads perfectly into a final thought for you listening. Consider this. What if you intentionally brought together that mindful self-awareness Osho talks about, really tuning into yourself without judgment, and combined it with those concrete lifestyle choices science says support your brain, the exercise, the diet, the meditation?
Yeah, integrating the two.
Could that blend offer a really powerful, maybe more holistic way to understand and navigate your own well-being? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.